Okay, up to this point, since we're talking about art, next, the Eastern Orthodox Church basically exits the stage of Western art development, so we can set it aside for now. What truly influenced the landscape of Western art and even the entire Western social structure unfolded on the Catholic side. Now, we must talk about the moment the entire Western world changed, a massive turning point. What was it? It was the famous Reformation. Before we discuss the Reformation, let's first understand and clarify what role Catholicism played in the development of Western art. To put it simply, before the Reformation, you could say the Catholic Church was the economic engine of Western art development. It was the ultimate patron of Western art. The act of artistic creation, though it feels like a spiritual act, a spiritual pursuit, seemingly born from the artist's inner needs. Well, let's be realistic. The development and creation of art cannot happen without money. Right? Art development requires an art market. Today's artists, if their work can't be auctioned or sold, or today's musicians, if they can't earn an income from performing concerts, then this industry wouldn't exist. So for art to be created and to flourish, there must be people who can consume it, right? There must be buyers. And in ancient Western times, the Catholic Church was the biggest buyer of artistic works. When you travel to Europe today, right, you see all these exquisite paintings and frescoes in museums and churches. Even the church buildings themselves were crafted by these great artists. So who paid for all this? Mostly it was the church. Why would the Catholic Church spend so much money sponsoring these artistic creations? Of course, if you say the Pope himself had high artistic pursuits, that's unrealistic. True, history has seen many popes, wealthy individuals, and great families who genuinely loved art. For instance, the famous Medici family of Florence, Italy, was renowned for supporting artistic creation regardless of the cost. The famous big three of the Renaissance, like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, all received patronage from the Medici family. Michelangelo even lived in the Medici household when he was young. But personal interest alone doesn't explain why they went to such great lengths to sponsor artistic creation. Of course, more importantly, it must have benefited Catholic rule. The Catholic Church believed that using exquisite art to depict the stories of holy figures in the Bible had a profound educational effect on believers. Additionally, the Bible contains various beautiful descriptions of heaven. People believe in Catholicism, right? All to go to heaven after death. So to strengthen their faith, wouldn't it be more persuasive to showcase the beauty of heaven in real life, right? Right? That's why these Western churches are so magnificently decorated, to let believers experience the beauty of heaven while they're still alive. You might think the splendor of these churches is just okay today, but think about it. This was 400 or 500 years ago when the economy was poor and most cities were dilapidated. But even then, no matter how poor, the church couldn't be poor. No matter how poor, the cathedral couldn't be poor. No matter how dilapidated a city is, the best, most luxurious, and most magnificent buildings are always churches. Say you're traveling in Europe. If you're lost and can't find your way, just ask for the cathedral. It's bound to be right in the city center. Now that we understand why the Catholic Church supported the arts at any cost, we can talk about the Reformation. As they say, things reverse when they reach the extreme. The Catholic Church needed money to support the arts. So at that time, the church was amassing wealth on a massive scale, and the clergy lived lives of absolute luxury. The Pope's lifestyle was even more extravagant. Moreover, the Catholic Church at that time invented the system of indulgences. What are indulgences? Well, the basic theoretical framework of Catholicism is that everyone is born a sinner. After death, one is destined for hell. If you want to avoid hell and go to heaven, you must do good deeds and accumulate merit during your life to offset your sins on earth. So, what does it mean to accumulate merit? Well, it's not the same as our common idea of doing good deeds, like helping an old lady across the street. In Catholic ethics, accumulating merit primarily meant contributing to the church. As for indulgences, it meant you didn't need to atone for your sins through actions. You could just pay for it. By buying an indulgence, your sins were partially offset. The more you paid, the more sins were cleared. The indulgence system back then was incredibly elaborate. Different sins had corresponding indulgences at different prices. For instance, an indulgence for petty theft was relatively cheap, but one for murder or arson would be extraordinarily expensive. In short, this system allowed the church to amass huge wealth, leading to a life of luxury and corruption for the clergy. Things eventually reached a breaking point, and then, as you might expect, trouble started to brew. The Reformation broke out, changing the course of history. The Reformation is, without a doubt, a massive and incredibly complex historical topic. To fully understand it, several books might not even suffice. We don't have enough time today either. So, I'll start with a brief overview. The core of the Reformation was opposition to Catholicism and the Catholic Church. It was against the Pope and the entire Catholic administrative system. The faith itself didn't change. They still believed in God and Jesus. However, the Reformation completely rejected the church's earthly administrative structure and system. The Reformation resulted in a brand new denomination known today as Protestantism. Of course, it wasn't a single entity, it had many branches. Generally, there are about 6 main ones, like Lutheranism, Calvinism, and Baptism. The current global landscape of the 3 main branches, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Eastern Orthodoxy, gradually formed after the Reformation. For example, North America is mainly Protestant, South America is mainly Catholic, and in Europe, the former Germanic cultural areas like Britain, the Netherlands, and Germany are Protestant. The former Latin cultural areas like Italy, France, Spain, and Portugal are Catholic. Eastern Orthodoxy is mainly in Russia. This new religious landscape, it essentially dictated the various paths that art would take in the future. And our Baroque art was also born directly under the influence of the Reformation. All right, let's recap. In this lesson, we started with a simple question. What is classicism, right? To understand classicism and the classical style, we first need to understand the Baroque style, because the classical style is defined in relation to the Baroque. But to understand the Baroque, we must also understand the reasons behind its emergence. And that reason is directly tied to the Reformation. But to understand the Reformation, we must also understand the basic trajectory of Christianity. So after a long detour, we finally clarified the general path of Christianity's development. We've left off at the Reformation. Next week, we'll dive into what the Reformation is and why it directly led to the birth of the Baroque art style. From there, we'll be able to understand what the classical style is all about. All right, I'll see you next week.